And let's see if that continues as we continue with this panel. And I'd like to turn now to Julia Paulson, who is the Dean in the College of Education in the University of Saskatchewan in Canada, where you lead the Education, Justice and Memory Network at JAM. And so, Julia, my question to you is, how does education help heal from trauma and shocks linked to violent pasts?
Thank you for this question, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for the honor to be with you today. Happy International Education Day. In answer to the question, I believe that reparative education is the greatest hope for peace, healing, and transformation. This conviction comes from my work with the Education, Justice and Memory Network that works in 24 countries on projects to develop creative approaches to teaching about violent pasts. And I'm honored to represent that network here today, and also to represent it in the pages of a UNESCO policy guide on addressing violent pasts through education that will come out later this year. Please read and engage with that guide when it comes out. And in EdJam, and building on the work of many others, we describe the approach as we're seeking to bring together and synthesize that work across 24 countries. We describe the approach to peace education that colleagues are developing in the network as one that's grounded in the idea of reparative pedagogies. So these are teaching and learning processes that acknowledge past injustices, that seek to restore relationships, and that work with learners to challenge the reproduction of inequalities and inequities and injustices that have their legacies in past violence, that reproduce themselves in the present, and that unfortunately are often unchallenged and brought into our imaginings of futures. So thinking with learners of ways to challenge those directly in our classroom and pedagogical processes. And I want to share 3 characteristics of reparative pedagogies that we're developing and discussing within that network with you today. The first is that reparative pedagogies are dignifying. They humanize and give historical agency to individuals and groups whose historical narratives have been excluded from dominant histories or recounted solely through lenses of victimhood and suffering. The act of taking up space where previously there was none and being represented on their own terms in history education can contribute to healing. It can do this in ways that show love, care, and celebration to past generations, and that this brings that strength into the present and projects it forward into the future. Second, reparative pedagogies seek to understand and respond to historical injustices and to identify their legacies in the present. They are truth-telling and they are inclusive of multiple perspectives, which enables them to balance an important tension in history education. And the way that this is balanced is through the skills and professionalism and commitment of teachers and educators. It's a responsibility of education systems to ensure that the right to truth is enshrined, that the right to truth that is enshrined in international law is applied within education in history and civics. This is an important principle and a connection between peace education and transitional justice processes. For education to be reparative, it's necessary that it's historically accurate and responsible in the ways that it shares information about the causes and legacies of past violence and injustice. What's so fascinating to witness in the work of EdJam projects, and what is developed further in the UNESCO policy guide, which gives some of these practical suggestions around history teaching, is the way that educators can be grounded in truth without making it totalizing in a way that can marginalize and silence. How they can avoid relativism while still acknowledging diverse lived experiences and interpretations. How they encourage dialogue, listening, and mutual respect, and refuse to give ground to hate speech. So that's just been incredible to witness the different ways that members of the network can do this. Finally, one of the ways that they do this, which is also the final feature of reparative pedagogies that I want to share with you today, is that these pedagogies are creative. They learn from artistic responses to conflict, they create art together with learners, and they share that art more broadly and use it as the basis for dialogue and reaching mutual understanding. So this commitment to creativity, I think, helps these projects to recapture ideas of pedagogy more generally, that teaching and learning is based in relationship, that it's a co-constructive, generative, and creative exploration. And this is at the heart of much of the pedagogical theory that's inspired teachers and educators, from Brunner to Freire to Montessori to Hooks. And this relationship at the heart of pedagogy, I think, is often forgotten in some of our mainstream education discussions, as we're so focused, and understandably so, on outcomes. So I think reparative education gives a real possibility for capturing the potential of education to contribute to peace. It does so by centering the pedagogical relationship and recalling the importance of arts and creativity within that. So thank you for the opportunity to share that learning from it, Jen.